Some viewers may find this content disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Who dares awaken me from my slumber? Ernie Davieau, the Squatch Whisperer. Yes, you have once again returned to the Fox Den for another episode of StarFox Radio and Midnight Lycanthropy. Yet, please, I am so thirsty. Much better. I felt very dehydrated and a lack of energy flowing through my veins. But this has now changed and I am revamped, and it is time for Ernie and I to take a walk into the darkness.
My creatures of the night, yes, once again, it is time for Midnight Lycanthropy here on Star Fox Radio. A legendary co host and guest has once again taken time out of his busy schedule to pop in and hang out with us tonight. That, of course, is Ernie, aka the Sasquatch Whisperer. How you doing tonight, my friend?
Not too bad at all. I hope you're doing okay yourself.
Heck yeah, I'm glad to hear you're doing pretty well. And yeah, no, I'm doing great. I'm just busy as heck, like always, which is a good thing. Just got a ton of stuff to work on, but that's the way the ball rolls sometimes, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're still a young guy, so you can really put the hours in.
This is true. This is true. No, I am up pretty late working on things, but I'm okay with that. I always try to tell everyone whatever path you choose in life, just put in the hard work and you will get a payoff. So, yeah, I definitely dump in a ton of hours on editing my content and filtering through encounters, evidence, working on other projects too. But at the end of the day, or the end of the night, however people would like to phrase it, when I sit back and look at my final product, I'm actually really happy with it now, where in the past and in the beginning I always kind of had issues with my content, whether it was like audio specs or image specs. But now I'm really happy with what I present to my audience, and it's also really good to hear the feedback from my audience as well. And 99.9% of it is really great. So, no, I appreciate that.
Yeah, you are definitely putting in a lot of the work on here. And you are right. That is what it takes to do stuff like that. You're a real warrior when it comes to that.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. I try to take on everything, even like when I did, some of the image work for you and the logo and stuff. I
Yeah.
tried to look at my projects as how would I like that? How would I like that to look as well? And, I'm super hypercritical of my own work and I tear down my stuff. So I would like to think that if I'm that super critical of my stuff when I do present it to others, that they're happy with what they get. Because, like I said, it's important to make sure that I haven't. It's hard to explain. Every time I create, when people are like, "Hey, what's your favorite video you've ever done, or your favorite image?" It's really hard to pick out any. Like, I have sure some I like more than others, but as an artist, there's a piece of your thought process and basically of you inside of every one of those you create. So it's really hard to ever pick out one that would be my favorite because, as I just stated to you, whether I'm creating my own projects or something for somebody else like yourself and your wife, I tried to put myself in that situation of, okay, like I just stated, how would I like this presented to me? So, no, it's really good to hear that.
Yeah, you really approach it the right way. That's what we do in my business. And, when my wife was out there working and everything else, she looked at it the way everybody else was looking at it, not just how she looked at it. So that's excellent on what you do.
No, thank you. And that's again why I try to bring people on, such as yourself and other co hosts and guests that are able to sit down and just basically bring some merit to some of the hypothesis that myself and others have been working on and some of the great theories that are floating around. Because a lot of people like to, think that we have it all figured out. But I think the way we figure it out is just collaborating with quality individuals and hearing and picking their minds, and like I was explaining to a friend earlier during a talk, you can learn, not you, but just all of us in life can learn so much by silence. And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I explained to her that some of the greatest knowledge I've ever learned wasn't from speaking and having to ask questions, it was from being silent and just listening.
Exactly. Spot on. That's even taught in Native American culture, to listen. Don't talk, to just listen.
Yes, and she was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And then I just explained, talk when spoken to. And she's like, "But," I was like, "Obviously, of course, not meaning I won't speak, but I'm just meaning that there's just so much great knowledge that can be gained just by listening and intaking that knowledge." So that's why I appreciate, like I said, guests such as yourself and others that come on and really take a second to think outside of the box, but also think logically with some of the things that could actually be occurring within the globe with some of these strange encounters.
Yeah, yeah, you're spot on that. There's just so much going on out there, and you've got both sides of that fence, and I guess that's what we're going to be getting into here on talking on different theories on Sasquatch or Gigantopithecus or what it is or what we think it is.
No, 100% excellent. I do agree with all that. This is going to be good because I have some interesting stuff that I've had presented to me recently and that I have some really cool theories on. And they actually tie up with some of the stuff that you've mentioned, as well as a ton of the research that you're doing. So I will basically start it off with some of my questions for you as to what are your thoughts and theories about how when people are seeing these Gugwe or these baboon-like dogmen, that in actuality that they probably are really seeing potentially a baboon or an ancestor of, say, the Dinopithecus, and meaning a lot of people don't understand how crazy baboons are. Like our geologist, a friend of mine, and also a member of the North American Dogman Project, William, was speaking about when he was younger. He went to the zoo and he was terrified that when he saw a yellow baboon, he legit thought he saw like a werewolf type of thing. He didn't even know what it was. Crazy, huge, long snout, had kind of like the pointy ears, massive teeth, acting all crazy. And I was watching a video recently with a pack of them, and people don't realize baboons go from anywhere from the high 20s to up to 200 or so in their pack. And when they're charging like that, running quadrupedal and bipedally, they have the huge fangs out. They're making weird barking, like crazy primate sounds. They're running sideways up literally these rocks and coming back down. And they have these huge manes, and they legit look like a wolf type creature with a mane, and that falls into the category as to what a ton of people describe this as. And I think it's because when the first type of encounters happened, when people were seeing these, they just thought it looked like a dog man or a dog being because of how it looked and was standing up. Well, everything I just described to you would look like a hominoid type canine creature to somebody that was an untrained eye. And also, when people look at baboons' legs, and such in the back, they're bent like canines, kind of. So again, to people with an untrained eye, that's going to all look like canine type traits. And now when people are talking about windows being opened and something using articulated type hands, baboons have hands like that. And also, when people say that the track patterns that they find are quadrupedal and bipedal, well, again, that's what baboons do when they run and they move. And a yellow baboon, just which is known to us to still exist, if it stood up on its back legs, could probably be your face. Now, a Dinopithecus, the enormous baboon that only went extinct around 10,000 to 11,000 years ago. Whoa, wait a second. That's a blink of the eye. That thing would have been around 6 to 8 feet tall and looked even more crazy. And now you have the cave hyena that only went extinct around 11,000 years ago, the short-faced bear that only went extinct around 11,000 to 12,000 years ago, and the dire wolf 11,000 to 12,000 years ago. Well, in 1890 in Idaho, someone shot what looked like either a dire wolf or some sort of cave hyena. And to me, it seems like the scientific community throws stuff at the wall, and if it sticks, it sticks. But I believe in the majority of science. But I'm just saying, in the example I'm going to give you, the 4 species I just named to you, that's all a blink of an eye. I feel like they're not sure if any of those species actually ever went extinct, which is why they gave the guesstimation of, oh, well, around 20,000 years ago, their species started to decline, and we think around 11,000 they went extinct.
Absolutely, you're spot on that. I mean, one of the things that we really have to look at, because the question is in a lot of cases, what are the people looking at? And you hit the nail right on the head there when you said if you're not ready for it, if you've never seen one before, and then all of a sudden there is one there, whether you see it in the zoo and it runs up right in front of your face, right at the cage, right next to you, it's going to scare the living hell out of you. The baboons, for instance, are very huge.
Yes.
People, you might come across the skull of a cow out in the middle of nowhere. Some farmer lost a cow 20 years ago or whatever, and your mind's just going to start racing around with you. The next thing you know, a bear stands up behind a blueberry bush or something, and now your mind is really blown. Now you're seeing probably horns, and you're seeing
Hmm.
baboon teeth, and a lot of that is the pareidolia alone really wreaks havoc on your mind. Then you've got the fight or flight. Your heart is racing. Your mind isn't prepared for any of that, And when you come across something like Sasquatch, the crazy thing about it, and I've heard the whole theory on the Gigantopithecus. That was what, a tooth and a piece of jawbone found in a cave in China.
It was actually found you were right about all that, but it was actually found in a Chinese medicine shop. Yes, listed as a dragon tooth, and it was going to be
Yeah.
used for some sort of herbal technique.
Yeah. So you're looking at it, and then somebody's going to pick it up, and we're not going to mention people's names, but people with PhDs and, doctor in front of their name, and they're going to go right along in that theory right there because that's what they wrote their thesis on, or they wrote their doctorate on, or whatever. Okay. And they're going to stick to that. And no matter what you throw at them, like you were saying, whatever they throw and it sticks to the wall, they're going to get the followers. You're going to, some are going to go with you, some are going to go with this guy over there. The fact of the matter is, with something like that, you also have what you call uncanny valley. And in all your reports, I'd say 99.9% of all your reports, nobody is describing a Gigantopithecus. It's uncanny valley is your mind can't comprehend something that has the face of a human being on it. So looking at your average encounter of happening in between 5 and I think it's 12 seconds, that's a very short period of time for your mind to take in any amount of information, really, or a significant amount of information. I mean, you're not on SEAL Team 6 or SEAL Team 1 or whatever, where you're going through your training. They're going to see how good your memory is. And, boom, we're going to give you 20 items. How many did you see in 5 seconds? That's really tough to do. You test that out on other people just by passing a picture around of anything and give them 5 seconds of another person and have them try to describe it. So my point is, if Gigantopithecus, first off, was really the thing that is running around the woods, why are people saying it looks more like a human being? That's their first thing that they say. that they thought that this is what it looked like to them. Then they might change it a little bit to fit like, well, maybe it was an ape face. Once they start focusing a little bit on that, because their mind is trying to protect them. I don't know if a lot of people can understand that, but you'd go crazy trying to comprehend something like that if your mind doesn't want you to. So that's just that alone. Now you want to get into, like you were saying, like the cave bear. I mean, some of these animals have been popping up, like a cross species between two bears, like a grizzly and a polar bear. So nobody's ever seen that before. So to see that, I mean, there's a lot of decision making to be done. If you're going to be out there hunting, you can't shoot the polar bear. You got to shoot the grizzly bear, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one thing that's out there. The other things that are out there, like I personally can't ever say to somebody, nah, you really didn't see a Mothman, will say, okay, or you really didn't see this, or you really didn't see that. Not after from what I seen, and there was no denying that. Those things, other people have seen them. They're logged down. I mean, could they be mistaken for something else? Well, if we want to give our time to that instead of trying to figure out where they are and everything, and trying to actually do the research on it, then we're going to have to try to decide what it is not. And I'm going to have to go back on the Sasquatch or the Sabe people, forest people. It is not a Gigantopithecus. That is for sure that it's not. I've heard people's presentations at conferences, and one individual actually took a casting of a hand that this Bigfoot, or whatever you want to call it, was going up the side of the hill, but it had to grab the side of the hill, which was moist like sod going up. And so its fingers sunk right into the side of the hill, like fist shaped. So he made a casting of that, and he showed it, and he said, anybody that thinks that their hands look like human are nuts. He said their hands are actually far from that, and they have short, stubby fingers. He has some letters before his name. Okay, I mean, that was a prime example. He's seeing what he is thinking in his own head, not as what really is there. Even though he acknowledges that it used its hand to go up the hill, he's not acknowledging the rest of the evidence. So the scientific community is going to throw away a lot of their evidence. If you took some of these scientists out in the field, they don't have their microscopes and everything out there. They're going to be just like you or I, walking around the woods or sitting up on the side of a hill just watching a valley or whatever. They are going to become the eyewitness. So what do they have left to rely upon? Most of them that have been out there, again, I can't mention names, but he wouldn't even have any tracks if somebody else didn't give him the tracks. But yet he's still convinced that it could be a Gigantopithecus. And there's a couple of them that are out there, which is really disturbing. So they're going to kind of weed themselves into a group or whatever, like the Dogman group, and then you're going to start coming out with all kinds of descriptions on it, because they're coming out and they're saying, well, they're only like 4 feet tall. So now everybody's going to see 4-foot tall ones. They're not going to see 6 or 7 foot tall ones. That happened in the Bigfoot community not too long ago. 3.5 to 4 years ago, that actually happened, because up until then, people were really thinking that these things were 15, 25, 30 feet tall. Now, because you have more eyewitnesses that are coming out there and people who can glean information off of somebody that they really strongly believe they're telling the truth, they can take that information. And now what we have is the majority of people have a sighting is like 8 feet tall, 7 to 8 feet tall. And they'll even come down with the weight on it. Up until now, the last 4 years, it was like 15 feet tall, 2,000 pounds, which people were thinking they couldn't get in trees or anything. Yeah, it might be tougher or something that weighed 2,000 pounds to get up into a tree. It'd have to be a big tree. I think you see where I'm going with this, Kenny, is the scientific community is actually they have bias themselves, and they shouldn't have that bias. And they also they'll talk to you about a hypothesis that you need that before your theory. You need to do that 2 times before your theory, but they're the first ones to jump that hypothesis and go directly to their theory. And that's what I'm getting at with Gigantopithecus, is that was never even a hypothesis here in the United States. As you were stating, that was found in a tea shop or whatever over in China. Okay. So they went right from that to the theory that, yeah, they're over here running around the woods. And that's what people are seeing. Not likely at all.
No, and that's all super, super interesting right there for sure. And 100%, that's a big thing is I love science. I'm a huge science guy, I always have been, but I do know that there have been examples of the Smithsonian, for example, which is a very cool place. Don't get me wrong, I love it. I've learned a ton from that, but I also know that certain things have been withheld and that they have different levels where, you and I can't go to, etc. So it is just important for science to sit down and listen for a second. And this is what I'm going to try to do with the scientific community, okay? And this is what I try to explain to some people and others that talk to me or want to work with me. If the things with, say, manifestations, hellhounds, skinwalking, more paranormal based things like that, we have people that can deal with that and do deal with that, like Ryan Tremblay and others that are really quality cryptozoologists. But that's not necessarily how I'm trying to approach this, okay? I'm trying to approach this with, say, if you're a biologist and I've never spoken to you in my life, okay? And you have no idea of what's occurring, you don't necessarily care, or maybe you would care, but you just never been exposed to this, okay? And I tried to sit down with you and you've never met me, and the first words out of my mouth are, I explain who I am and that someone next door to me has been seeing these things come out of a portal. That's the end of the conversation, okay? But if I sit down with you and I speak for a second and I explain to you that I have some theories and so do others that I value, where we believe as the species that we have mentioned previously in this episode are still existing. And if you look at these cave systems where people are going missing, and you look at some of these sightings where reports that people are seeing these animals that look like this, we have some footprints that don't look like bear, that potentially look like hyena, but what are hyenas doing in North America still, etc. And I've just explained that to you. Aren't you now more likely to continue to listen to what I have to say now than if I previously approached it the first way, as just stated?
Absolutely. Absolutely. A lot of people don't. They just, and that shows when somebody tells you their account or whatever, or you read their account out of a book or online or whatever. It's how much information are you actually getting out of that? You're much better to sit down and talk about it. You talk like about the Smithsonian. I mean, to have a little bit of backup on there. They even admit to destroying uh, hundreds and hundreds of skeletons that were all over 8 feet tall. That's part of our history. And for science to be involved, they've got to be able to get down into the Smithsonian. They've got to be able to take a look at all of this evidence that's down there, that they still have on different things down there. As somebody who, I mean, you can't research anything without digging. Just talking about it, it just becomes another little story. But when people start piecing things together, like the Randy Harringtons that are out there, and a whole bunch of other people that I know, I wish I could right now remember everybody's names that are really great. I want to say a whole bunch, but it's really like only about like maybe 4 or 5 that are really good at what they're doing, and they're really challenging themselves, questioning what they're finding. Just because you found a track, that doesn't mean too much. You've got to look for the other track. You've got to look for other signs in the area. Challenge yourself on that,
Yes,
you know?
exactly.
And that's what the people are not doing. They're assuming that, just to give you for instance, that these things aren't intelligent. It wouldn't matter if it was your dog or if it was Dogman. I think that Dogman is intelligent. It's probably more intelligent than your dog. And your dog is highly intelligent. Your dog memorizes every move that you make. Your dog knows when you're going in the refrigerator, why you're going in the refrigerator, because you're a creature of habit. Okay. And that being said, is when we approach the woods or wherever it is that we're going to do our research, and we assume that we are the apex, that we are godlike, I should say, out there. We're the top and we're the smartest. That's where we make our mistake. You can't overlook, you can't put yourself up there because you're going to make that mistake. Even in your trade, if you were an electrician and you're just bebopping along, 20 years into your career, and you just think that you got it down, and you're just bebopping around one day, and all of a sudden you just grab that 240 line, okay? You just became complacent. A good researcher doesn't become complacent. They're always watching everything. They're always checking themselves. Like what you do in your field, you're always trying to make yourself better all the time. That's what people need to do in the research field. Yes, it's good to be able to play that word judo. If you want to have that academic background, then you'll be able to fill out the paperwork, and you'll be able to sound really smart when you say F you to somebody. But, if they don't understand what you said, okay, then it doesn't count in my book. All right. Maybe maybe in the eyes of maybe somebody else that may be standing around, so they can laugh at you. But that in itself would be something a little bit different. To me, again, that the researcher, the eyewitness, everything comes down to them. You can't do anything without going to school to learn different things. You're actually an eyewitness. You're listening to everything, you're paying attention to everything, but you're seeing everything, because a lot of it is visual also, i.e., as in what you do.
No, I appreciate all that, and that was some excellent input right there. And I actually, again, would like to get some more insight from you because, as previously stated, that was excellent there. But recently, well, I mean, not maybe recently, but in 2006, Jody Cook, the legendary, yes, founder and our Grand Master of the North American Dogman Project, found a very large baboon skull in the middle of the forest in Ohio. Okay. This
Wow.
is in an area where there are grassman reports, gugway, etc. What I think potentially, and Shane Michael Crisp actually think, and so do some others, and I would like to see what you think about this, is, again, okay, so people see these baboon like werewolves, okay? Well, again, a yellow baboon looks like a werewolf. I promise people, check out those things. They're gnarly, okay? And if that is what people see when they report some of those, okay? Again, somebody in Texas told me about how a woman spoke to him, a great friend, was coming to hang out. She called him distraught, said she hit a baboon. And he was like, "What?" She's like, "Yes, I just ran over a monkey, a baboon or something." And they went back and there was blood, a smear, but there was no body. It had obviously gone off. Okay. Now, like I stated, they're in packs. We know up to like 200, and they're crazy. But again, it could have escaped from somewhere, whatever, which we do know there's research facilities, which also just proves again that if things like these have escaped, that they're out there. And I just wanted to see what you potentially thought about that, because I think when people are seeing the devil monkeys, okay, or the baboon like dogmen or the gugway, I really think they're seeing some sort of large baboon.
That could very well be. A lot of things are going to come into play there. The first thing that would be my concern, if I was there, I would want to know a time frame on that skull, so I could get a time frame to say, uh, let's say it was 3 years old. That there is going to raise my eyebrows. Let's say it's 40 years old. Okay.
Yes.
Now that if it's 40 years old, I'm going to go back and look in the archives. I'm going to see if I can find a train wreck with baboons on it. And okay, that was 40 years ago, and it didn't procreate or anything like that. But if it's only a couple of years old, I would be I would be more concerned about the area that I was in when I found it. You could tell if it's going to be fresh or not, anyways. I've bleached skulls out there before from coyotes because we do the Native American thing with them, and it doesn't take long to do that. So you can tell unless it was buried, then it might be a little bit darker, but still. That being said, I would be highly concerned if it was only like, let's say, a year or two old, because then you would have to be thinking this thing is procreating with other ones, quite obviously. So there's more of them in there, which would leave the possibilities open, because you've got to set up the parameters of what the possibilities are, and then eliminate them one by one until you have your answer. You'll have your answer if you get all of that in line. I don't know if you follow me on that at all. You can't just have one, because if you have just one idea what something may be, then okay, that's kind of biased, because if it's not that, then it's got to be the other thing. You want to do as many things as possible, eliminate as many things as possible. You want to be looking at the ground, you want to be looking at the trees around it, the habitat, everything, if you're going to really research something like that. But that there, I would be very concerned about seeing that. And I believe that's the picture that you sent me, and I picked up on it. I didn't know the history of it, but I picked up on it right away. And as a hunter, I mean, let's face it, some people who have never seen a baboon, and let's say they were out with me, I could have told them it was a saber-toothed tiger baby, and they would be freaked
Yes.
over that. Okay. But you've got to know what each one looks like, have a good working knowledge of it. If you're going to go out there, you want to know the difference between uh, poison ivy and grapes. Okay. You can't just go messing around out there. You got to have some kind of knowledge to back you up, how to survive in the woods, things like that. But that one there, that picture that you sent me is interesting. A baboon skull out here in Ohio, I would be really concerned on how it got there, how far away that it really is away from somebody's house, because a lot of possibilities there, right, Kenny? There could be somebody who had their own little game preserve and raised this thing and decided that they no longer wanted it, as people will do, and then let it
That's
go.
funny you said that too, because actually for our future episode, because we got to wrap it up here soon, but that's so interesting you said that, because that's actually another theory that I have, is that some of these people in the past that thought they could just have exotic pets, which I spoke about in one of my other episodes, The Beast of Jevedon. There's actually two theories as to what's going on with that. That it was either some rich people that wanted to impress the king and queens and were taking exotic animals from Africa, which is very, could be, or that cave hyenas and striped hyenas were actually up in this area that we don't think that they're in. But the problem is, people like the peasants said that they saw a striped hyena, which are known to be not pack oriented and also scavengers. So they would 100% prefer to feast on something that's easily accessible. But then the person that shot it, because after it spoiled, they had like pictures of it because they wanted to stuff it, etc. He said it was not a striped hyena and that it looked like a spotted hyena. So again, that just kind of comes into what you were just speaking about, and I stress that to people to actually take that into consideration as well, that we do have animals that have escaped, and people don't really understand how much an animal can adapt. And before we let you go, correct me if I'm wrong on this. Look at tigers, for example, at the Siberian tiger or the snow-based monkeys, or even take a coyote, okay? The very first versions of those had to have been a tiger that was not equipped to be in the snow like that, that ventured up there. Am I wrong? And same thing with those monkeys that had to have gone up in that area that weren't equipped for that. And if a coyote can live on the East Coast and then also down in an area where there's a ton of snow, or up in an area like that, same thing. It must have been the same version of that coyote that went over there. So they had to adapt to have offspring, which then made them not technically immune, but adaptable for those scenarios, correct? So if a few baboons could have got into a cave system, I'm just saying if they did escape, why could they have not made it and survived?
You're exactly right, Kenny. Those things, and you're looking at things that are equipped to survive. It's not like you just let a house cat go and it maybe might make it, because there's so many predators out there. What would be the predator of a baboon? That would be, you know,
Slim.
you know what I'm saying? If you had a baboon and you let it go out of your house or whatever, or out of your barn because you had it for a pet for a while, it's equipped to survive. It will eat meat. It'll get these things, that happened in Florida, during the early Tarzan movies. Weismiller, I think it was, is he actually bought those animals. And then he released all these monkeys down in Florida, and they're running around down there. If you take a simple pig, a domesticated pig, and put it out in the woods and let it run around out in the woods free, after about 3 months, the thing is growing tusks.
Yeah,
And
it's the fastest animal to revert back to being wild, correct?
exactly.
Wow, that's also amazing. Well, I love it, man. I thank and appreciate you every time you come on here because it's great stuff and we always have a really great conversation. And that's what I'm looking for, my friend, is people that are willing to kind of just ask the tough questions. And I do
Yeah,
try to stress to everybody that being a healthy skeptic is a good thing and is okay, and asking skeptical questions is okay, especially if they're presented in proper ways, because everyone can't just ask questions that people want to hear. If you want to figure out something,
exactly.
you need to ask questions that are, yes, presented in a proper way, but are tough questions. And I
Yeah,
expect people to ask me tough questions too, and it has happened. I mean, that's the way it needs to be. You can't be asked simple questions and give a simple answer to find the equation for a massive problem. So,
exactly. In my book, there are no easy answers, not really. Unless it's you're going to light a match and is it going to burn my hand? Yes or no? Yes.
yes.
Do that. But these things like this, the majority of things, there are no easy answers. I think you get it. I think that's where we hit it off. It's to talk about it, and that's what this community and all the other communities need to do. They need to talk about all these things, get it all out there, get all the ideas out there, get all the questions out there, answer the questions, but keep an open mind and go, yeah, for sure.
Thank you for everyone who stopped by tonight for another episode of Midnight Lycanthropy here on Star Fox Radio. If you did enjoy this episode, please like, subscribe, and share it. Feed the algorithm, and I will see you on the next one.